I recently ran into an old co-worker from our time. We worked at the sandwich shop in the truck stop. We chatted for a while before he had to leave, but I started thinking about my stint at that place. Specifically, the creepy sandwich guy. In college, I worked some overnights at the truck stop. It was a pretty safe space in a smaller town, and there had only been 3 incidents in the 4 years the place had been open before I got hired into it. One trucker got robbed. One group of ladies were arrested for servicing the truckers, and one overdose. I was never really worried, even though my co-workers seemed a little concerned that I was a young girl working overnight at a truck stop when there was only one other employee in the whole place. Usually, it was really slow. Most of the time, I'd get 3 or 4 truckers come in within the first hour. A couple of people came in with the munchies and ordered 3 dozen cookies at one time. But usually, it was maybe 1 or 2 an hour, so I'd spend about 3 hours cleaning ovens, finishing dishes, deep cleaning the lobby, that kind of thing. Then I'd get to spend whatever time between customers doing homework. The overnight boss on the other side, the gas station side, was cool as long as everything was cleaned and temped regularly. A few weeks before I inevitably left the place, a guy came in about 20 minutes before my shift was over. So it's about 5 a.m. by this point. My co-worker had arrived early so that he could fill out paperwork he had to get done. So he was sitting back in the back office already. I started making this customer's sandwich, making chit-chat like usual. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. He told me he was driving from New York to Wisconsin. He asked me a little bit about how my night had been. Nothing crazy. I wrapped up his sub, rang it up, and threw in a small discount for him, since he seemed nice, and I was just happy I was getting ready to go home for a few hours of sleep before I headed to campus. When I went to take his change, things went wrong. He dropped the coins in my hand, but suddenly he had his grip tight around my wrist. The next thing I knew, I'm on the other side of the counter on the floor. He had yanked me across the counter and still had a tight grip on my wrist. Thank God my co-worker was there. The manager on the other side had slipped into the bathroom, so to this guy's knowledge, I was the only one there at the moment. But my co-worker, while filling out his papers, was looking at the cameras and had seen everything. He was out of the back just seconds later after I hit the ground. And before I really knew what was going on, he had chased the guy outside. He didn't pursue him far, afraid that someone else was nearby who would come after me. So he ran back inside, locked the door to our side of the store, and shouted for the managers to call the police. The cops came, they searched the area, and watched the security videos, but nothing ever came of it. The guy disappeared, and I had never heard anything about him. I put in my 2 weeks' notice the following day after my nerves had calmed down. I was switched around, so I worked both during the day around my classes for my last few days. And they had made it a policy that 2 people were to be working both sides of the truck stops on overnights from that point. I still live about half an hour from there, and honestly, I haven't went back since my last day, just because that memory is still in my mind almost 8 years later. I was a cashier at a busy grocery store, only a 5-minute walk from where my family lived. I knew several customers very well since I worked regular weekend shifts, and lots of people came in at the same time each week. I always worked Sundays, 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. One Sunday afternoon when I met this weird, creepy middle-aged man. He was with a woman and a young toddler at the first time, so naturally, I thought they were a family. Nonetheless, I was my super friendly self. A lot of customers told me over the years that I always made them laugh or smile. Maybe this was confused as flirting, I don't know. So anyhow, this man, despite his wife or girlfriend being there, was over friendly with me right away. I noticed pretty quickly that he wouldn't take his eyes off me and held eye contact way too long. They left and I brushed it off. Then at night, around 9 p.m, when there was barely anyone in the store, he came alone when I was on break. I had another employee actually come upstairs to the break room telling me that a customer was asking for me by name. I didn't think of anything of it because sometimes my friends came by or a customer came back because there was a mistake on their receipt. Cashier names were always listed on there. So of course it's this guy, but nothing is wrong. He came down to the grocery store to not complain or buy anything else, but to tell me that he had a great interaction with me and that he sees great potential in my customer service skills, and would I like to go for coffee with him so that he could get to know me better. Professionally, of course. I politely declined and let him know that I was in high school and had other professional plans for university. He becomes really pushy, saying it's never a bad thing to get your foot in the door, and can he at least get my number for when I finish university and looking for work? Keep in mind, I'm 16 at this point, who the hell asked for that? I kept declining, and then he offered to drive me home. It was quite late. I said no. I live close by, so I walked, and he started asking, "Oh, which street do you live on?" I live close by too. At this point, I can see another employee from a distance starting to wonder what's going on. I'm getting creeped out and annoyed. My break was interrupted because of this guy after all, so I just said no thank you over and over and over. Finally, he left, saying he'll be back next Sunday to see me because he sees great potential and won't let me just go like that. Red flags go off all over my head. I call my dad, tell him everything and ask him to pick me up, even though we live super close, like not even a 2-minute drive. Obviously, he says yes, worried about me. When my dad picks me up, I notice this guy in his car in the parking lot, waiting more than an hour since we spoke. I, stupid me, didn't mention it to my dad because I'm 16 and still in denial that this could be a serious situation. When we start driving off, I notice the guy that he is following us, so I finally tell my dad. My dad drives straight and then circles around 2 different streets to see if he's following us, and yes, he is. My dad, being the European man that he is, gets out of the car to wreck this man, but the car speeds off. We wait a bit in the car as my dad debates calling the cops, but decides not to. When we get home, he parks the car in the garage. The story doesn't end there. Nope. My parents tried to force me to quit my job or just stop working some days, but I'm like, nah, it's fine, because who the hell knows, I was a stupid teenager. So nothing happens during my weekday shifts, and I basically forget about it. But alas, the next Sunday night rolls around, and so does this fucker, this time taking a photo of me with his phone. I shit you not, he took a photo of me as he approached my till, laughing it off, saying, "I can't forget what you look like, right?" I was seriously shook up, but too nice to tell him off like I would have that happened now. I don't remember the whole encounter, but he was pushing for me to sit down with him privately because he owns a business and needs people like me. I was so uncomfortable and scared, but tried to play it cool. My dad picked me up again that night. He wasn't in the parking lot this time. I stopped working Sundays, and I gave my boss the description of the man. He came by one Sunday asking for me, and was straight up told off by a supervisor, telling him to never come back or the store would pursue legal action. I never saw him again, and I went off to university. Thanks for watching the first video on this channel. There is much more to come, and with time I will improve.